It's time to start my July wrap up, and I am starting this wrap up vlog very late in the month. Very, very late. I definitely got a little bit slumpy at the start of July, and it is currently the 13th of July. And I am just starting the vlog, and I'm going to tell you about one book that I have read. So do not expect to see a very large stack at the end of this vlog, because I just do not see that happening. I'm also away coming up for an entire week, and I don't know how much I'm going to read then either. So this vlog and this wrap up may be rather small, but we're just going to go with it. We're just going to see what I read in the month of July. After the Amazing Readathon, I needed a break from readathons, so I am actually participating in no month-long readathons for the month of July. The only readathon I'm doing is my own Patreon readathon, Timmy's TBR-a-thon, which you will see a vlog update of that when it's over. But that is definitely the only readathon that I will be doing. So there won't be like updates throughout this vlog of how I use these books for readathons, because I'm not doing any. So this is really going to be short, sweet, little synopses of books and what I thought about them. And next month, we'll jump back into a full month-long readathon wrap-up. The book I have finished, though, is Five Broken Blades by My Corland. I went into this not knowing what to expect. It's Red Tower Books. I'm always nervous about a Red Tower Books book because we know they're not edited the best. And I do think that was the main issue with this book, was the editing. This was a debut author, and I actually think the story and the idea of this story was interesting. I think the author fell into a few traps that debut authors sometimes fall into, and that's totally fine, and a good editor could have helped with that. But we know that's not the case here. In this book, we follow 5 assassins as they are brought together to kill the king. And we don't really know why they're killing the king or why they're all brought together, but that is their job. I do think there were 2 perspectives in this book that were completely unnecessary. I think we just needed the people that were there to actually do these crimes as perspectives. The other characters could have been in there, but I did not need their POVs. It was unnecessary to have them, and it could have cut down this book to a more manageable size. Not that it's so large, but a lot of things were quite repetitive, seeing it from so many different angles. But I will say that I think the idea of this story, the overall idea, was very good. The editing was the main issue. I ended up giving this 3 stars, and I'm still undecided of whether I'm going to continue with the series. I'm probably leaning towards no, but I will reserve the right to change my mind. So I just finished filming for a pretty big vlog project, which was Can I Trust Nicole from Dusty Book Sniffers. I really had fun being Nicole for like 2 weeks and diamond painting and crafting and reading Nicole's favorite books. Within that vlog, I read 3 books and had varying good success during the week. The first book I read was The Bandit Queens. This book has really good satire vibes and follows Geeta and her female friends. Geeta is living in India. She's in a caste society. She's kind of in the bottom of this society because her husband has run away. Her husband has just disappeared. Everyone thinks that she has killed him. So when one of the other women in her social circle comes to her and says, "My husband is beating me. Can you help me kill my husband?" Geeta agrees. And this book is a feminist, satirical story following these women trying to raise themselves up in a society that constantly wants to put them down. This book definitely dragged a little bit in the middle. I was really liking it at the start. It dragged a little bit in the middle, got a little bit repetitive, and I ended up giving this 3.5 stars. I think if you like lit fic, you would really like this. That's not a genre I typically read, so 3.5 stars is actually a pretty good rating for lit fic for me. Then I read Elevator Pitch. This book is a thriller, and it follows a bunch of people in New York as something kind of horrible starts happening. On Monday, a bunch of people get in the elevator malfunctions, it basically drops to the floor, everybody dies. Everyone thinks this is an accident. The next day, it happens again. People are starting to put together that multiple elevator accidents may not be an accident, and they start looking into what's going on. We follow a detective and his partner, the mayor of New York, a newspaper correspondent who kind of follows the mayor around, and a few other side characters. In this book, we follow so many perspectives that I think a lot of them were unnecessary, at least a few of them, and added to the size of this thriller. This thriller is like 450 pages. It's just too long for a thriller. It lost its thrilling element just due to its meandering pace. And I really felt this had a pacing issue and ended up giving it 3 stars. The last book I read was Wolf Gone Wild. This is a contemporary romance with a fantasy side element. The fantasy part is that our main characters are a witch and a werewolf. Our werewolf, Mateo, can no longer transition into his wolfy form. He is stuck because he's been hexed. He goes to this coven of witches who are all sisters who kind of oversee New Orleans and the magic of New Orleans. One of these sisters is Evie, and she is a hex breaker, and immediately her and Mateo are working together to break his hex, but also has some sexual chemistry. We follow them as they fall in love and break this hex. I had a pretty good time with this. There was one part of this book I didn't love, and that was the wolf form of Mateo. He was called Alpha, and he could kind of like break into Mateo's subconscious, and they would have like back and forth conversations, and I did not love that part. But that was really only prominent in the first part of the book. It got less and less as we went along, so I didn't mind it as much as I maybe would have had it been throughout the entire book. But I ended up giving this 4 stars, and I definitely want to continue the series and see the other sisters' romances. So last week was Timmy's TBR-thon, and I needed to let you know about what I read during that week. Timmy's TBR-thon is a mini board of my big Timmy's TBR, and I play it with my patrons every 3 to 4 months, depending. I had to read 4 books to get to the end of the board, and here's what it is. The first book I had to read was This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune. This was also the B&K book club book for the month, so that was very nice to get this on the TBR. In this book, we follow Lucy and Felix. Lucy, 5 years prior to the events of this book, goes to Prince Edward Island with her friend Bridget. Bridget is from Prince Edward Island, and she is going to visit her family, and she's bringing her best friend Lucy with her. They met in Ontario, in Toronto, working at a similar firm, and they became best friends, started to be roommates, etc. Lucy and Bridget take different flights to Prince Edward Island for reasons, and Lucy arrives and Bridget's flight is delayed and is not now arriving for the next day. Lucy needs to be let into the house and is waiting for the brother of Bridget to answer some text messages to let her in. She goes to a bar, she meets a bartender, she hooks up with said bartender, later finds out it's the brother. Bridget had kind of already said, "Don't fall in love with my brother." So Lucy and Felix decide to never tell Bridget. They continue to see each other every summer. Lucy keeps going to Prince Edward Island for various reasons every year, and every year kind of hooks up with Felix. Now, in the current summer, we see Bridget fleeing to Prince Edward Island, away from her wedding. We don't know why. We do eventually find out why. She calls Lucy and says, "I need my best friend." Lucy hops on a plane and goes to Prince Edward Island. Felix is there, and they have to sort themselves out. All this history is at play, and it all needs to be figured out. I love the relationship in this book. I loved Lucy and Felix's relationship and how they figured it out together. I loved Bridget and Lucy's relationship. I loved Bridget and Felix's relationship. I really enjoyed how they all connected together and how they handled it like adults. I ended up giving this 5 stars. The setting in this book of Prince Edward Island is fantastic. It really brought something to this book, and I really enjoyed it. Then I started to read To Fudge or Not to Fudge, and I only made it 130 pages into this cozy mystery. This follows Allie, and Allie is a person who has a fudge bakery and also a restaurant. She is out one day on a walk with her dog when her dog finds bones in a bush and drags out the bones. They are part of a dead body, and it starts this mystery. We don't really talk about the mystery for about 100 pages after that. We start off strong, and then it's kind of forgotten about amongst things that are going on in Allie's life. Allie has decided to start participating in this baking competition. However, the baking competition is not really on page. It's more talk, not show, and I would have liked to have seen that. I also did not appreciate how some of the people in this book conversed about other people. There was a lot of misogynistic statements towards Allie from some of our male characters, and a lot of it just really did not sit right with me, so I ended up DNFing this. Then I read The Hedge Witch by Carly Thomas. This was a very short novella. It's the prequel novella to the book Threadneedle that I read last month. I actually thought this was a middle novella between the first and second book. It's kind of listed that way on Goodreads, so that's why I thought that, but it comes before the first book in the timeline. It follows Rowan as she goes away for the summer to see her aunt, who is a hedge witch, and learn hedge magic. It was a book. It was fine. It didn't really bring anything to the story, in my opinion. It really could be skipped. I gave it 3 stars. Then I very quickly, because it was almost midnight on the last day of the readathon, read Galatia by Madeline Miller. 5 stars. Loved this short story. It's very short. It's 46 minutes long at regular speed. I ran through this book. It's based in Greek myth where a woman is carved from stone and then she comes to life. Her story is so haunting. It really was beautiful and beautifully written. 5 stars, loved it. And that was the last book I read for Timmy's TBR-a-thon. However, I have read 1 book since. And that is One Cursed Rose by Rebecca Zanetti. This is not part of any vlog. I just read it because I wanted to and because I was doing a buddy read with Alicia. This is a book that going into it, I knew very little about it. I knew it was a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and I knew the hard copy was absolutely beautiful. It's such a beautiful book. And that's why I bought it, was Alicia brought it to my attention, told me it was a retelling, and I just bought it. This is a dark Beauty and the Beast retelling. Please check trigger warnings. There's definitely some dubious consent in this book. There's a lot of things in this book that are dark. So if you aren't into dark romance, I would not go into this. And again, check triggers whenever you're going to pick up a dark romance. I, however, loved this. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 stars. I'm really excited that it's a series, and I'm excited to see what the next book is going to be. I believe it's going to be a Sleeping Beauty retelling. Also, it is a mafia romance with a very side of fantasy. And in this book, the fantasy is based around 4 leading families who all own social media companies. And their social media companies are linked to jewels that they can charge and use to create power. That's a very simplistic explanation of it, but I thought that was really neat to have a magic system around social media. It's very light. The magic is very light. It's definitely more of an urban fantasy, mafia romance, dark Beauty and the Beast retelling. It sounds like a lot, but it actually works really well. We follow Alana and Thorn. Alana is our beauty and Thorn is our beast character. There is a curse similar to the Beauty and the Beast story. There's enough of the Beauty and the Beast story that really made this still have that vibe, while giving me a brand new story and making me fall in love with the characters and the side characters that I'm definitely going to be following in the next few books. I don't know if I said already what my rating was. I may have. I forget what I've already said. I've just been talking at the camera about this book because I liked it so much. 4.5 stars is what I gave this. It was almost perfection. So it is the end of the month and I've read 2 books that I have not told you about. So let's chat about those first. The first one I started before I went on vacation and I finished when I got back, and that was Reckless by Elsie Silver. I've been reading all the Chestnut Springs books for the Chestnut Springs Along, hosted by Claire and co-hosted by myself in Brooklyn. And I have had very mixed reviews of these books. 3 stars for the first, 5 for the second. I DNF'd the third. And this one I gave a 3.5. So it is my second best in the series, but it's certainly not an overwhelming win. There are moments in this book that are 5-star moments. And there are moments in this book that are 2-star moments. And the frustration that I have with that is overwhelming. The inconsistency in the writing is so frustrating to me because it's making me not even really like the book that I did like. Because one book does not make a whole series. And I'm struggling with the fact that, yes, there is one really great book, but the rest have great moments or almost no great moments. It really depends on which book you're talking about. And I'm just so frustrated with this series. They are clearly just not for me. I know they're well loved on BookTube, but there's a lot of things that I have issues with in them. And I'm just ready to kind of close the door on Elsie Silver. My last book of the month was Luck of the Titanic by Stacey Lee. I have a whole vlog reading this, a slice of life reading this vlog. This is one that you picked for me to read when I did a book haul reaction video. And unfortunately, it was just okay for me, 3 stars. My issues with it, though, were not really issues with the book necessarily. It's issues with the fact that I hauled this when I really liked historical fiction, and I don't really read historical fiction now. So it's just not a genre I read. Secondly, it is a boat book. And it took a really long time to get to the Titanic part of this book. And the first part could have happened on any boat. And I'm not a boat book person. So that took away from my enjoyment of this read as well. So unfortunately, we ended the month off on just an okay read. But overall, I feel like the month wasn't too bad. Like, I don't think we had too many like really bad reads. They were all middle of the road or above pretty much. So since the month is over, let's talk stats. I read 10 books this month, which is very low for me. I normally read a lot more than 10, but I was away for an entire week, and that's just how the cookie crumbled. This resulted in 3,424 pages read. My worst book of the month, I think, was The Hedge Witch. I did not enjoy this book. It was very boring. It was just so boring and just so unnecessary. Luckily, it was just a couple of hundred pages. It wasn't too long. It didn't take that long to read. I'm still interested in the series, but this novella was just added for really no reason. And for my best book of the month, I have This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune. I loved this book. We read it for B&K. It's a winner. I love when the book club books end up being some of my favorite books, and I cannot wait to dive into more of this author's list. But that is it for the month of July. I need to get into August, so I am going to end it here. Let me know what your best book of July was down in the comments. I love seeing how your month went. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you later.